Is God actually real? From a standpoint of logic and reason. Okay, so a lot of you probably already have an answer in mind. If not, just sit tight. But wait, before you start racing to explain to yourself how right you are, stop for a second and just think. Whether you are a believer or not, ask yourself this question. Why do I believe that God is or isn't real? Is my reasoning logical? Is it thought out? Can I actually explain why I believe these things? Okay, so now what I've done is either I have thrown you into the sit tight group, or I've done nothing with this prompt so far. Well, let's not waste any more time, shall we? I mean, you did come here for an answer after all, so let's get an answer. Okay, first of all, let's go down to the basic bare bones truth. Whether you are a believer or you are not a believer, the first thing I like to start with is there such thing as objective truth? The answer to this question is yes. We can see this just by a little bit of logical reasoning. If you were to say that there is no such thing as objective truth, you'd be making an objective truth, thereby immediately disproving yourself. So we can see that objective truth is in fact real. So by finding out this information, we also have another thing we can branch off into with this logic. If something is inconsistent, some part of that will always be a lie. No matter who you are or what you believe, these are two essential truths that we can base all the rest of our reason off of. This also sets the parameter for why we should believe what we do. We should base our belief off of reason, not off of what's possible, but what's reasonable to believe. So now we ask ourselves, what is reasonable to believe? Well, I suppose now would be a good time to mention that I am a follower of God. Now, to some of you, that might immediately invalidate my opinion. I think that you'd probably be a little bit silly to narrow your lens so much, but I can't stop you. I mean, God did give you a choice after all. So, try as I might, this isn't an actual conversation between me and a person right now. Who would have thought? So I'm kind of just talking to myself. I mean, this is a script. I'm not just saying all these things on a whim. They are thought out. Who would have guessed, right? But anyways, this is more here to answer a question. So, best I can do is simply explain my reasoning as to why I believe God exists. Also, something else, saying that I believe God exists is something of an understatement. I know God exists, with all of my heart. Why? Just because I believe that with nothing further? No, because it's reasonable to believe, and furthermore, it's completely unreasonable to believe that God doesn't exist. Now hold your horses, everybody. Before you start going and getting all snuffy and ready to throw some fists, just listen for a second, okay? First of all, I use the word reasonable. Does this suggest that there's a possibility that God doesn't exist? Well, yes, actually. What's wrong? Surprised to hear me say that, I'm sure. But just stick with me for a second. So I don't believe what's possible, I believe what's reasonable. And I believe that it's reasonable to trust God's existence. As a professing follower of God, it might be a little strange for others to hear me say it's a possibility God doesn't exist. So what exactly do I mean by that? Okay, go ahead and imagine putting on your swirly little propeller cap thingies, or whatever just floats your goat. Go ahead and imagine this. From where you're standing or sitting right now at this exact moment, now, there is an invisible, undetectable rubber ducky that is 3 feet in front of you and 2.5 feet to the left. You cannot see it, touch it, hear it, or interact with it in any way, shape, or form. Now, what if I told you that this rubber duck is actually 100% real? Would you believe me? No, probably not. And if you do, well, I think you're kind of crazy. You know, just you can just think that, I suppose. But anyways, you probably don't believe me. Now, can you prove me wrong? Can you factually prove to me that Robert the Duck isn't there? 'Cause I don't think you can. You have no way to prove me factually wrong. You could say it's not there, but I could just say, yes it is, you just can't interact with it. This is something I like to call an absurd claim, and while you could make a claim like this to quote-unquote disprove Christianity, I'm not going to take it very seriously. For example, you could say that we are all in an alien simulation, or just any kind of simulation, honestly. Anything you could use to argue against that, nope, just part of the simulation. And, I mean, if I'm going to go based off of logic and reason, I can't really prove you wrong. I just have no way to. But I'm also not going to believe that. And even if that was the truth, why would I want to believe that anyways? If that really is the truth, then whatever, I'm fine with being delusional for now. So, with absurd claims out of the way, is it reasonable to believe that God exists? Yes, it is. There is undeniable evidence, plentiful amounts of undeniable evidence that show and prove that God is 100% real. Now, you may be thinking, okay, so there's lots of really smart people who say God exists. Well, there's also lots of really smart people who say that God doesn't exist. And to that, I would say, well, can you really call them smart people? Because personally, I don't think so. Anyways, jokes aside, these supposed really smart people either can't explain the very core foundations of why we are, or they are wildly inconsistent and make no sense. And remember what we said about inconsistency. If it's inconsistent, it always means there's a lie. Well, actually, that's one of the main reasons why I believe the Bible, and I believe what God says. He is never inconsistent at all. There's always consistency with all of His word. History lines up, the prophetic visions always come to pass. There's just no inconsistency anywhere. Now, I could start going in circles, listing off a bunch of reasons as to why you can prove God, but I believe in your ability to click on a link and go to a website. So, go out there and get 'em, Tiger. Another thing I could do is start going and listing a bunch of reasons as to why other religions aren't true. Now, there are a lot of different religions, and obviously I can't touch on them all, but I can give you a few examples that come to mind. First of all, let's go ahead and start with Jehovah's Witness. They predicted the end of the world how many times now? Was it 4 or 5? I don't even remember. The Quran, well, they can't make up their mind on whether or not Jesus was a prophet or if the times he predicted his own death were all lies. So it's inconsistent, thereby untrue. Let's go with a more obscure one as well. What about Buddhism? Buddhism is a religion that seeks to eliminate desire. Problem with that, you need to have a desire to eliminate desire, so yeah. What about something else that most people don't even consider religion? Atheism. Literally just one question. How do you make something from nothing? Please explain to me. And don't even start with the, oh well, quantum mechanics. Unless you're a quantum physicist, you have no idea or understanding of what that means. And even if you are, you still probably don't. Well, I could sit here and yap my mouth for hours and hours, but that's going to be a little bit of a problem. These things do take time to make, after all, so with this coming to a close, I'd like to leave it off on this note. God does exist. He is real and is worth devoting your life to. Anybody who is here already believing God's existence, I hope this helps strengthen your belief and your understanding. Anybody who came in here unsure or believing God doesn't exist, I hope you can soften your heart and reconsider things. Take a standpoint of reason and logic and really ask yourself, should I believe God doesn't exist? Why would I even want to believe that? But anyways, with all this coming to a close, I'ma say the final goodbye now. Remember, God is real, and He loves you. Very, very much. Okay, bye!